7 years ago, KTM set foot in India. They started a movement that quickly gained momentum via Orange Days, Track Days, and rider meetups. An unknown brand from Europe generated a frenzied following on social media and soon became the icon of affordable performance. It had all started with this motorcycle, the KTM Duke 200. The Duke 200 brought a lot of features onto an entry-level motorcycle in the Indian market, whereas other manufacturers were routinely downgrading products to cut costs. KTM took the opposite policy. The liquid-cooled DOHC engine was just 109.5cc, but it produced a healthy 25 horsepower at 10,000 RPM. Torque was ample as well at 19.2 Newton meters at 8,000 RPM. The lightweight steel trellis frame kept the overall weight even on the latest version to 148 kilograms, and earlier versions were even lighter. And then came the series of features like the 43mm upside down forks, 10-step adjustable rear shock absorber, 150 section wide rear tire, aluminum swing arm, the most informative console in its class, LED indicators and tail lamps. The only thing missing was probably a full LED headlamp, but KTMs have always been about that raw, unapologetic styling and a low underbelly exhaust which kept the center of gravity low and made the motorcycle that much more sleeker. And yes, it handled. I considered the KTM Duke 200 to be the almost perfect city bike. Almost perfect because right up to now it didn't have ABS in the India spec version. 7 years on and it finally gets a single channel ABS. So it's time to put this motorcycle to the road test and see what it can do. Open the throttle, going at a full throttle right now. It's a brand new bike. It's doing 131 kilometers per hour. So that was the top speed test. Super early on a Sunday morning. Heat's making it really hard to shoot later. I wanted to start as early as possible. It's around 4:30 right now, and we're riding the KTM Duke 200 ABS version. I used to own the Yamaha R15, and that was back in 2010 when I bought it, and for the next 3 years there was nothing interesting. I had practically given up studying about the new launches because nothing was coming. Back in those days it used to be pretty much the fastest bike on street, so easily did not get overtaken. One bike overtook me on the straights. I was like, okay, I can catch it back up in the corners because, as you know, R15 felt really good in the corners. By the way, I did some hard braking on the Duke 200. Felt better. These guys keep improving stuff, and so I got overtaken on the straights, and I thought I could catch back up in the corner, but I couldn't, and the bike disappeared, and I couldn't even understand which bike had overtaken me. So I went to my office and I realized that the bike which had overtaken me was visiting the house next door. So it was parked right across the street, and then I realized that this was the bike, the KTM Duke 200. It has always been my favorite city bike. As you can see, it can easily go to 100 kilometers per hour, and we are still on 5th gear, and it almost reached 100. Now we do have the 6th gear for this bike. It's light, it's agile. You should ride this bike to understand how light it is, and then compare it with anything else on the market in the 200 and 250cc category, including the FC25 you can ride, an R15 you can ride, CPR 150. They don't make those anymore, and you understand how light this is. That's the emphasis. On a city bike, you definitely don't want the weight. The only drawback was that it didn't have an ABS, and I couldn't recommend it to you guys that openly, because you know, people said that 200cc is good enough for tour, and this is, I mean, if you wanted to maintain 100 on a highway, and a lot of people have toured on Duke 200s. These have done Ladakh. Modified Duke 200s have won Raid the Himalaya, which is a very tough Himalayan rally, and modified Duke 200s have won that. A lot of stunters prefer this because it's got that, you know, very true power delivery. I mean, the throttle response is absolutely amazing. Getting the Duke 200 over some bad patches of road. The suspension is hard, but it is very true. It doesn't wobble around that much. And the emission norms have come in, and a lot of different bikes are feeling different after the BS4 norms. Not this bike, feels almost the same. Let's talk a bit about the ergonomics. The handlebars on the Duke are pretty low, but it is still a very much upright sitting position, something that I've always enjoyed about the Dukes. But the foot pegs are immensely rear set, so it's kind of like a Dukes used to have a very much supermoto origin, and over the years the KTMs have become more and more street naked. I mean, if you ride the new Duke 390, it's got a completely street naked body positioning right now. They made the front end heavier, and seat height has been increased, so the bike, you know, it makes you lean a little bit forward. That's the new one. So the front end stability and feedback has both improved. This one, however, the front end stability isn't that big. However, this bike is more flickable and feels more playful while flicking around. One of the most flickable bikes actually. It's perfect for the city ride ergonomics. For the longer tours, may not be the best bike, because for the rear set foot pegs, a lot of people don't like that on the touring. I personally don't mind. I've done over 600 kilometers in a single day. I like it. A lot of people tell me that Duke is just another 200cc motorcycle. So what's so special about it? Well, let me tell you the things that are special. It's got a 300mm disc up front as far as I remember, but what I definitely remember is this uses 4-piston calipers, whereas other 200cc bikes mostly use twin piston calipers. So those two extra calipers, you must ride this bike to believe it, what difference it makes. Second of all, it got the TRELLIS frame, a very lightweight, and if you ever break it, it's very cheap to replace as well. It's just 11,000 rupees as far as I know. So that TRELLIS frame is there, which gives this bike great agility, stability and cornering. So that's what it has. It has a 6-speed gearbox. It has liquid cooling. It has upside down forks, 43mm fat upside down forks, which gives the front end great amount of stability. And the rear suspension is a 10-step adjustable suspension. It's got LED indicators. It's got a very light curb weight. The initial Duke 200, the first batch, was even lighter. Then they had to make the alloys heavier because the lightweight alloys were cracking under Indian road conditions. Spinning it through in the corners. I believe we can do further, but the air pressure is a little bit on the higher side, so the bike's moving around a bit too much. Oh yeah, the instrument console, it has trip time, clock, lots of warning lights, fuel consumption and everything, and you can just change it by pressing this buttons on the console. So you get average of your speed and everything. You get your mileage, you get service due, and it's one of the most informative consoles. Now the 200 has been low on the torque, but still the engine has never let down on a uphill climb, or even in Ladakh where the bike was under a lot of luggage, and some people even carried pillions. The motorcycle always climbed up effortlessly. While doing the drag race with the RS200, we had a very short space to slow down, so I ended up testing the brakes going from over 100 km/h speed to absolute stop. And the single channel ABS of the motorcycle here performed quite well. Brake is also really nice. There is a little bit of bite, and then there is a strong progressive feel. Remember when I was riding the RS200 on the same exact stretch, slowing down was quite a task. And on that bike I had some stability issues under braking, whereas on the Duke the braking happened quite in a linear fashion, and at least in the brakes department this is one of the safest motorcycles you can buy. So we've been riding the Duke 200 since morning. We started pretty early at around 4:30 a.m. Pretty good bike. I've been riding this for maybe last 7 years. I've had chances to ride this, and not much has changed. If you guys think about it, it's now BS4, it's got ABS, but the bike feels and rides the same way, handles the same way. Very light, very agile bike. I think you've heard it maybe 100 times on my review. Compared to the other bikes, what's good about this is the brake feel, the trellis frame, and how agile it is. Again, repeating myself over and over, but fit and finish has improved over in the KTMs. The vibrations, not much there on the Duke 200. Heating problem wasn't much there compared to the 390. Even the 390s have improved. So they've made smaller changes in refinement. But if you have ridden a bike 7 years ago, it's still the same bike. That's the Duke 200, because we've ridden the 125, you've seen it. I said it may be good for somebody who's starting up in college and they want more mileage. This one's delivering around 33 kilometers per liter. That one would be delivering around 50 kilometers per liter. So there is a huge difference in mileage if you go over to the 125. But this packs in 10 bhp more of power. And what that does is it allows you to take this bike into the highways, and I've tested the top speed, got 131 kilometers per hour. So maybe not at the top speed, but you can easily cruise around 110 kilometers per hour all day. It has a 6th gear, which is very important in the highway. And people have done Ladakh on this bike, people have done rallies on this bike, stunters like it. So it's gonna be your best city bike for me. That's always been there, and you can step up from here to the Duke 250, which is more or less a little bit more power, but a lot better with the 390's bodywork. And then obviously have the Duke 390, which is the absolute best, I feel, under 4 lakhs for India, any motorcycle that you can buy. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. The ergonomics and feel will make you comfortable in most of the riding positions. Touring, the rear set might be a little bit too much, but I personally don't have any issues. 1.9 on road Kolkata You can check out your pricing in your city. I think it makes a solid impression for all the kit it offers for that price. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon. This is Rahul. Goodbye.